Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Newport News School Board for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. On behalf of the members of the school board and the superintendent, I welcome each of you present and watching. A quorum is present to transact the business of the school division. The COVID-19 pandemic has had an unprecedented effect on all of us. We are all adapting to this new way of conducting business, and the school board is as well. Personal barriers are installed between each of the members of the board, and our staff are practicing social distancing in the auditorium in compliance with the governor's orders. During this evening's meeting, some of our participants will join us in person, as well as some will join us virtually to assure social distance. We are taking these steps to ensure the health and well-being of our staff and the public. We value and appreciate your partnership. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the pledge to the flag. Please join me while we call on Mr. Hunter to lead us in the pledge.
Okay. Here it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
And so, Dr. Parker, do we have a invocation this evening?
No. Do we have an invocation, staff?
No, no, sir.
No invocation.
Okay, so the next item on tonight's agenda is going to be our recognitions. I believe we do have some recognitions. Dr. Parker, please take it away.
All right, and I'll turn over to Ms. Price for the recognitions this evening. We are recognizing our school and business community partners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
A little change of pace. Tonight I have the honor of presenting this evening's recognitions. School division partners provide an array of resources, events, and support to Newport News Public Schools, our students, families, and staff. They are an integral part of the fabric of the school division. Tonight we have the honor of acknowledging one of our outstanding partners, Ivy Baptist Church. So joining us virtually is Pastor Kevin Swan. Pastor Swan? Ivy Baptist Church's motto is also their mission: love, grow, serve. The church and its members are dedicated to community service and outreach. Over the years, Ivy Baptist Church has provided special event programming and support and financial support to dozens of school division programs and schools, particularly Huntington Middle School and Heritage High School. They have also served as mentors and role models for our students and their families. For several years, Ivy Baptist has hosted a community meal event at Heritage High School that has served hundreds of our students, families, and members of the surrounding community. The event also served as a volunteer opportunity for dozens of our students. Despite COVID-19 restrictions during the most recent event, the Ivy Baptist family, in partnership with Heritage High School and other community organizations, provided more than 750 meals, distributed school supplies, and provided free flu shots. This level of demonstrated commitment to the community is not unusual for the Ivy Baptist Church family. Last year, Pastor Kevin Swan and our superintendent, Dr. George Parker, collaborated to create the Southeast Community Partnership Initiative. This series of meetings brought together leaders from the government agencies, nonprofits, businesses, and faith-based organizations to work with school leaders to address the needs of students and families in the Southeast community. Ivy Baptist Church is a bridge builder, a problem solver, and the embodiment of what it means to serve the community. Pastor Swan and the Ivy Baptist Church family, thank you for your service to Newport News Public Schools. We do have a certificate, a plaque that we will get to you as soon as possible, but we thank you for all you do for our students, our staff, and our families. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Price, and to Dr. Parker and Mr. Brown, and to the school board on behalf of our entire membership at Ivy Baptist Church, I humbly accept this award and thank you for thinking of us. We feel strongly about our community. I have said often that our communities are better when there is a triangle that used to exist in our communities but no longer. And that triangle is when you have strong churches working with strong schools, working with strong families. And if we can get back to that place, then I believe that our children will be safer and there'll be better opportunities for them to succeed. And so, again, I want to thank you for thinking of us tonight. We accept this award, but we also feel that this is what we are supposed to be doing. This is our calling, this is our work, this is our mission, and this is our passion. So, again, thank you so much, and we humbly accept this award. I do on behalf of Ivy Baptist Church.
Thank you. We know we have several members of your congregation joining us electronically and watching as well, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Pastor Swan and members of Ivy Baptist Church. We certainly do value your partnership.
You're welcome.
During our regular meetings, we provide time for the public to address the school board. And these opportunities are scheduled in the early part of our agenda and also towards the end of the meeting. The school board recognizes that during the pandemic, some members of the public may not be able to join us in person. To that end, citizens may submit comments via web form up to 30 minutes prior to the meeting, and those their comments will be included in the official meeting record. As well, we will accept comments via email and voicemail up to 30 minutes prior to the meeting. At this time, we are going to take comments for speakers. Please recognize that when you come up, you will have 3 minutes. The green light will come on. When the yellow light comes on, that means it's time to wrap up. And when the red light comes on, then we ask you to end commenting. And the first card that I have tonight is from Mr. Mark Baer.
I'd like to thank the school board for listening to me. And I want to state that I'm a parent, concerned parent, and I understand the pandemic. I've been working the whole time through this whole ordeal. I own my own business. If I go out, I don't have nobody to take care of my end. I have a roof that I take care of over my kid's head, and you know, we're trying to get the kids back to school. These kids need to be in school. This Zoom stuff is not good for them. My younger kids, it doesn't hold their attention span. It doesn't do anything for them. I feel sorry for the kids that don't. I have a mother-in-law, and she's there to keep them directed. There's too many breaks. There's not enough. They got to go from one day to another day and click on this and click on that. It's not good for them. I understand there's concerns. We're asking, give an option. All the other districts have tried, are doing it. All the private schools are able to do it. You're a public school. You get paid by us. Tax dollars, government dollars. There's no reason that we can't do this. Can't find a way. You're finding a way to meet in here. They're finding a way to have student drivers be in a vehicle with an instructor. That's as close quarters as you can get. I ask you to live by your slogan out there. Heroes work here. Heroes go to the front line like I do every day. And go to work so I can have money to take care of my kids, even though this pandemic is going on. They go to the front lines and deal with the general public. Y'all have not even taken a step to go to the front lines to deal with the general public, which is the kids. And the biggest group of inequality is, with the lowest equality, is the kids. The last 10 years, they have not been given the education to compete against the world. That's what the world does. They compete against our kids. They come to our universities. Y'all haven't been doing it. You know you haven't been doing it. So let's find a way. Get the kids in school. They need to be in school. They need They need to interact with their friends. They need to get education, proper education. If you want to do that slogan out there and be a hero, like my wife's a nurse and she's a surgical tech. She's in there. She's been working all the time dealing with the general public. I just ask you, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barrett.
Thank you.
All right, next card we have here is Miss Barbara Scott. And is okay, wonderful.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And I'm not going to remove my mask, but I'm going to thank you for allowing me to come to speak with you. The fact that we are all standing here tonight in mask, and I'm here in a mask, really underscores the severity of my concern and why I felt like I had to come forth in reference to the retirees' health care premiums being increased over 40% during these unprecedented times. On Saturday, I called several of you and emailed all of you, and so I want to thank Dr. Best for talking with me on Saturday and responding to my email, and Mr. Brown, I thank you for your email that you sent to me today, and I have a copy of that email with me, and I read it. There's one statement that is made on your email that it says that additionally, in order to allow retirees time to prepare and research options, this change will be effective in March for this raise of premiums, and retirees will be notified of the change prior to the holiday shutdown. Well, my letter I received was dated January 6th, and I received it on January 11th. To my disbelief, I thought, I don't even believe, is this for me? Maybe there's another Barbara Scott. When I spoke with the benefits office after checking with the marketplace, they said if I were to change, I didn't have until March 1st. That information would have to be into the benefits office by February 15th, no later than the 20th, in order for that process to take place. And I don't know if either of you have ever visited the open marketplace to look for health care. To navigate that was unbelievable. So today, if you're not aware of it, marks the first anniversary of the COVID-19 virus in this country. And this morning I heard on the news that they expect another 100,000 deaths in the next month. On Monday, Mayor Price held his annual MLK food drive because COVID-19 is impacting families who needed this service as never before. They're recipients of it. And at a time where we're facing a global pandemic, I'm asking that the board not make this unprecedented change to a population of senior citizens, us retirees, that are impacted first by the health crisis and then by the financial crisis. The optimal solution would be to grandfather us in with such a small group. Not knowing the demographics of this group, many of us may be nearing 65. Another less optimal solution could be perhaps not during this insurance period with COVID-19 looming, but at least maybe at the end of the fiscal year where maybe other reallocations can be done to cover this. So I just implore the board to not make the decision at this particular time amidst a global pandemic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. All right, Mr. Gore. So I promised you that if you did come, that I was going to have you speak. So I'll give you a moment to collect your thoughts because I know you didn't necessarily fill out a card. But Mr. Gore is our former student rep from last year. And Mr. Gore, we are always so very pleased and privileged to have our former student reps come back and talk with us. So as you collect your thoughts, I think the board definitely wants to know what school are you attending now, how is school going for you, and how do you feel that Newport News prepared you for that? So we'll go ahead and let you speak.
Is this a 3-minute,
Yeah, so
all right,
3 minutes, yes.
a lot of stuff to fill in 3 minutes, but I think I got it. So right now I attend the University of Virginia. I'm studying global public health. I might also study neurology. I kind of forgot the second question already. Let's see.
Oh, how are you doing in school? How is it?
Oh, school is pretty much amazing so far. So I've learned like a lot from my professors. I've met a lot of different people, and I made a lot of different relationships. Overall, my time at UVA has been magnificent, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. When I was at Newport News Public School System, I didn't expect to be equipped with all the resources that I needed in order to actually, succeed at UVA. For example, my teacher, Ms. Michelle Cullison, actually, she was my English teacher. She helped me a lot with my essay writing. For example, I don't think that I've scored below a 94 on a single essay. And that was mainly because, like, when I was in junior year, I struggled with essays, but, and maybe that even lowered my self-confidence a little. But when I came into my senior year, I actually started to show a little bit of improvement. It only takes a little bit of improvement to actually succeed. So when I came to college, I actually delved into a lot of political issues that I felt was important today, such as feminism, the minimum wage gap, the access to educational, access to education, educational disparities. I talked about a lot of that into my, I incorporated a lot of those issues into my essays. And I showed, and those results have actually been shown, because I went from 94s at the beginning to getting near 100 to 98. And that also shows what Newport News has done to me, what Newport News has ingrained in me. Not to mention, I wouldn't be able to even speak in front of all of you today if I wasn't even a part of the school board, or even if I wasn't a part of the IB program. Because in Newport News, in my 9th grade year, I was the shyest kid in the classroom. I would sit in the back, have my hood on. My teacher would, yell at me to take it off, and I'd be reluctant to do it. But now I'm actually able to sit here in a suit and a tie and actually be able to communicate with you guys fluently. I feel as though if I wasn't at Newport News Public Schools, I wouldn't be able to do any of those things at all. So I actually thank you guys for the opportunities that you have given to me, and I definitely appreciate it. Did I reach 3 minutes? All right. Oh, was there any more questions?
That was wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Gore,
All right.
and thank you for coming. No, don't leave. Go ahead and take your seat, but Ms. Lusher, we're going to definitely during the break get a picture with Mr. Gore. So the board
good to see you.
wants to get a picture of Mr. Gore, and we're so very proud of you. I know that we all are, and we're so very appreciative that you care enough about your community to come back and give us that encouragement. So that's very encouraging. We appreciate that, Mr. Gore. All right. Now, I believe that we are now, we'll move on to section 3, which is the consent agenda, which includes 3.01 minutes from the work session on December 15th, 2020, 3.02 minutes from the regular meeting on December 15th, 2020, 3.03 minutes from the special meeting on December 15th, 2020. 3.04 financial reports, including the revenue report for December 2020, the expense report for December 2020, and the child nutrition services report for December 2020. 3.05 the personnel report, and 3.06 budget transfer. At this time, can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right, motion is presented. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
All right, heard a second from Mr. Ely. Is there any questions? Is that correct, Mr. Ely? That was with the mask on. It is
Mr.
challenging.
Harris.
That was Mr. Harris. Okay. I'm looking for lips to move, and I didn't necessarily see lips moving. Your voice sounded similar. All right. So, Mr. Harris seconded the motion. Is there any question on the motion? All right. There being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hunter, 4.
4.
Zaman,
4.
Dr. Best,
4.
Mr. Ely,
4.
Mr. Harris,
4.
Mr. Brown.
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Then we will now move on to item number 4, section 4, which are action items. We have item 4.01, which is a policy revision and fiscal management policy. So, Dr. Parker, is there a presentation?
Actually, sir, the policy revisions that are going before you this evening are, yes. at the last
Yeah.
board meeting. And our staff is standing by if the board has any questions regarding those revisions.
All right, so then, can we now have a motion to adopt policies presented in item 4.01?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the policies and revisions of the fiscal management, Chapter D.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Is there a second?
Gary Hunter, second.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. We have a second. All right, so now are there questions from the board in regards to fiscal management policy? All right. There being none, then Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hunter,
Gary Hunter, 4.
Mrs. Searles Law,
4.
Mrs. Amon,
4.
Dr. Best,
4.
Mr. Ely,
4.
Mr. Harris,
4.
Mr. Brown.
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, then the next action item is item 4.02, which is a revised policy BEE. It's our electronic participation in board meetings. Deputy City Attorney Lynn Spradley will address any questions that you may have. At this time, can we have a motion to adopt revised policy BEE?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the revised policy BEE.
All right, a motion has been brought forward. Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, seconded by Dr. Best. All right, now for questions. Are there questions for the city attorney? All right, there being none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hunter,
Gary Hunter, 4.
Mrs. Searles Law,
4.
Mrs. Amon,
4.
Dr. Best,
4.
Mr. Ely,
4.
Mr. Harris,
4.
Mr. Brown.
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
Then now we are on to our report section. So we now have reports and information, section 5. 5.01 is an update on return to learn. And Dr. Parker, I do believe you have a presentation here, hopefully not too lengthy of a one.
Yes, sir, and always good information, and I think it's incumbent on us. I think you'll be somewhat pleased with some of the information tonight. Joining me will be Mrs. Mary Lou Rousseau to present some information on COVID metrics. I will discuss some recent information from the governor's office, and then Dr. Tina Manglamott will discuss, provide some more instructional information regarding upcoming assessment schedules and instructional pieces. So we want to make sure we have some information regarding vaccinations. So we'll share a little bit of information for public review tonight, as well as a survey that will go out to our staff regarding vaccination schedules. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Mrs. Rousseau to kick us off, and I will pick up on the governor's information.
Members of the board, I want to start with an update on our COVID metrics. You've seen this picture before. It looked a little different, though. This basically shows what we expected to see after the holidays. The entire state is now in the highest risk of transmission category, so you see every locality is red. You can see that Newport News' numbers have continued to increase. We are now at 917.6 cases per 100,000 persons, with a case positivity rate of 21.3%. On the next slide, you'll see from our COVID dashboards, it's updated for you every week. You can see that the Eastern Region, Peninsula, and Newport News are all in the highest category, as well as all increasing in terms of the rates. The positivity rate is decreasing in the Eastern Region and fluctuating in the Peninsula and Newport News, but still all in the highest category. There's one other factor on the dashboard, which is our ability to implement the key mitigation strategies, and we are doing this effectively with staff, and we believe that we're going to be well positioned to do that with our students when they return. We continue to make efforts in that direction. Another part of our COVID dashboard reports our statistics. This really needs to be updated, and we usually have to do that on Wednesday, so that'll happen tomorrow. But I do have some information for you that we'll use tomorrow to update this. Through December, as you can see, we had 75 positive cases among our staff. What you don't have on here is the number of contacts. We had 190 contacts. Those would be people who had been in close contact with someone who had been positive for COVID and therefore needed to quarantine, so they're not available to come to work. In January, through noon today, we've had 58 positive cases and 57 contacts. So it's quite likely that we will exceed in January what we have seen so far since the beginning of this situation. So I think it's safe to say that we are reflecting the community around us as well as the state. We're seeing the surge. I can tell you that our nursing staff who is doing our contact tracing is really busy. I want to thank and acknowledge the work that our former health services supervisor, Daria Weber, our current health services supervisor, Nancy Carlson, and their nursing staff are doing to make sure that we are letting folks know when they've been in close contact so that they can quarantine. But we'll keep you updated on this as the numbers develop, and you'll see those new numbers on the dashboard tomorrow. And with that, I think I'm to turn it over to Dr. Parker to talk about the state's new guidance. Dr. Parker.
Thank you, Mary Lou. So as we saw over the entire state, we have seen a rate. We're in the middle of a spike, a significant spike, in terms of COVID transmissions within the community, and we're starting to see some of that manifest itself with our employees who are reporting positive cases. The governor came out with an announcement last week to provide some interim guidance that would support and or supplant some of the initial guidance that was provided at the beginning of the school year in terms of providing in-person instruction. And there were guiding principles that were supported by the VDOE to align with, continue to align with the CDC COVID health metrics. But there were 6 particular points that are listed on this slide, and I'm pretty much summarizing the governor's information. We will have a link to that specific document on our website available for our community to review. But those key items were: the governor expressed an interest in schools finding ways to support in-person instruction and moving forward. Under these current circumstances, we have had the opportunity to look at schools, divisions, and or private schools and public schools that have had in-person instruction. And there is credible scientific evidence to show that with the 5 mitigation strategies implemented consistently, which are a part of our Return to Learn plan, that that schools are a safe place to minimize the transmission of the COVID vaccine, virus. In many cases where there have been incidents of community spread, that spread has been minimal to the amount of 5 or less individuals in terms of community spread when there have been cases in schools. So the governor expressed an interest in continuing to find pathways to try to support in-person instruction even under these conditions that we're seeing currently. The second principle is our current Return to Learn priorities. Prioritizes our young learners, and he emphasizes continue to focus on young learners, students with disabilities, and our English language learners as our first tier of priority. As you're aware, our Return to Learn plan consistently looks at those groupings of students as our key priorities to initially get back to in-person instruction because it will benefit them the most. And we continue to focus on that, and that will be our first tier as we look at a schedule for in-person instruction. He encourages us to ensure that we're providing a quality educational experience by providing, making sure the educational experience is priority number 1. As you're aware, we have a lot of focus on our virtual learning at this point with the supports for social emotional learning, for supports for students who are having some academic deficiencies, and we'll continue to do that until we can get those students into face-to-face instruction. But the governor emphasizes to continue to focus on the quality of education as our number 1 priority. He emphasized the importance of focusing on the CDC-supported safety mitigation strategies such as physical distancing, hand washing, and wearing of masks to ensure that the risk of community spread in our schools remain low or non-existent among students once they return to in-person instruction. Now, we have implemented those mitigation strategies for our staff who are coming to work in our buildings. And as of today, we still yet have not had a case of community spread in any of our schools. We've had individuals report that they had a positive test. However, we have not had an individual in our schools contract the COVID virus from another individual in the workplace. So we feel very confident that the mitigation strategies, when implemented in fidelity, will minimize the risk of contracting the COVID virus in our schools. Consider our unique community and the needs of our community, and we've just talked about how unique Newport News is. We do have a high density population of minority people of color who are highly susceptible to the COVID virus. We have to make sure that we're considering that. We've heard from our employees. We know that we have employees who have not only health risks, are susceptible to the virus themselves, but also family members who live in the home may be of significant health risk as well. So we have listened to our constituents, and we know that we still have to prioritize getting our students into in-person instruction because it does not meet the needs of all of our children. And I think this board has continued to hear from the community as we look at our pathway for moving forward. And the governor's asked, point 5, consider our unique community when making the decisions. It's very important that our population demographics are different than other areas of the state. And he encouraged us to be flexible. So in that being said, he emphasizes the point of not looking what can we do a month, 2 months down the line, but what can we do 2 weeks from now or on a 4-week schedule. And that takes us into the next slide in terms of how our planning will be impacted, or 2 slides from there. So this page is part of the governor's information that was released online as well from the governor and the VDOE. This page provides interim guidance and addresses the steps to guide reopening decisions in the future. The first step is to assess the implementation of our mitigation strategies. We just talked about that. And where are we as a school division? We know that we have implemented all of the mitigation strategies in addition to several others, such as social distancing, hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfecting spaces, and also contact tracing. You heard from Mrs. Rousseau earlier this evening that our school nurses have been trained in contact tracing, which some school divisions have not yet had their full nurse clinic staff trained to do a level of contact tracing when there is a positive reported case. So we feel we're well equipped in that area. We have adequate PPE for staff and students when they return. We do plan to have student desks placed 6 feet apart to support social distancing. We have sanitation stations in every classroom and at every main entrance and several other locations throughout our schools and support buildings. And our custodial staff have been cleaning and disinfecting in accordance with CDC guidelines from the beginning of the pandemic. And all of our nurses, I mentioned again, have been trained in contact tracing, and that is a very significant benefit to our employees. In addition to these measures, we have placed air purifiers in designated classrooms and other areas, and we have purchased desk shields for tables that our elementary teachers use for small group instruction when students will not be able to be 6 feet apart. The key emphasis going into the next slide that we have to continue to consider is the readiness of our staff. And we have provided our school administrators with safety guidance for their staff. We provided additional guidance in terms of how to maintain safe standards in your buildings to minimize the risk of COVID transmission. And we feel that upon implementation of a return to learn plan of moving students in-person instruction, we are well equipped to move forward once it's appropriate to do so. So there is one area that is most important and this is the good news tonight, is that we are engaging with the city and our local health department and our local health systems to start moving forward with assigning scheduling vaccinations for staff. And we feel this is the game changer that will allow us to align our staff vaccinations with moving staff and students to in-person instruction. So I just wanted to give an update to the board and the community on that this evening, and where we are with the vaccination schedule. As you're aware, our school division staff around the state are in the 1B classification for vaccinations. 1A has 1A staff who are community health professionals, those individual clinic, hospitals. Some of our first responders are in the 1A category, and those folks have already started receiving their vaccinations or are completed with either the first dose of their vaccine or scheduled for the second. So we are awaiting right now confirmation from the city to move forward with the 1B category, and we're working on the timeline for doing that. And I'll just read from my notes here on what that entails. So a major factor in improving safety will be the vaccination of NNPS staff over the coming weeks. We're currently working with the city leadership, local health providers, and Peninsula Health Department to schedule the vaccinations of staff and other local groups which are in the designated 1B category for vaccine distribution. Currently, Christopher Newport University has been designated as a vaccination clinic location, and they are on track to open as early as the end of this week. And they'll start doing a trial run at the end of the week by vaccinating a small portion to make sure that the clinic is up and running. And then hopefully the following week, they'll start bringing in larger numbers for vaccine schedules. However, the quantity of vaccines at this time are unknown. That's the one piece, and we anticipate any delays in getting the number of vaccinations needed for all of our identified staff may take several days or weeks. Therefore, prioritizing our staff, our staff based on school division operations and service to students is currently taking place. So our plan right now is to send out a survey to staff because as we are aware and looking at the 1A categories that everyone will not voluntarily take the vaccine. So we are not mandating that every person take it. However, if they want the vaccine, it will be made available to them. But because we're not sure of how readily available the vaccine will come in, it will come in batches. We have to make sure we prioritize our staff who will be allowed to schedule appointments to take the vaccine. And we are doing that in alignment with our return to learn plan. So the first tier, obviously, our child nutrition workers, and we're going to actually have a detailed schedule, a prioritized schedule fleshed out by the morning. The survey is going out to all staff because we need to know how many vaccines we will need to have available over time. But the goal is to get the elementary folks, special education, English language learners, our elementaries up and running so that we can move up our timeline for bringing our students, scheduling our students for in-person instruction. So we're aligning that with the vaccine distribution, putting those tiers on the forward end of the priority pool, and bus drivers because they got to ride buses. So that will be the plan that we're working with the city this week. We're working on that detailed criteria with them and providing them with the list, prioritized list. But our employees will have that option of taking the vaccine, or they will indicate whether they choose not to take the vaccine. And we will share that information with them shortly. So once we have prioritized the operations, we anticipate that we will be up and running with vaccinations by next week. I think there's a small group that's going to receive vaccinations at Riverside Health Systems, and we're prioritizing that group now. They have some additional vaccinations that they've offered to our school division personnel, roughly 350. And we're going to assign a group that will take those vaccinations as well. So we feel in the next few days we'll start hearing that our staff are being vaccinated, and we will also move forward with a timeline for phasing in-person instruction accordingly. A short survey will be sent to staff and inquiring whether they will take the vaccine. It's important that we collect the information, and we will send that information to the city for their planning in terms of vaccination distribution. We have to also indicate that other groups are in that 1B category, which is why it's important, highly important, that our school division personnel complete that survey as soon as possible so we can provide a concise list to the city to organize the scheduling of the vaccine, because when that vaccine comes in, it has to get in someone's arm as soon as possible. You know, as you may not be aware, the Pfizer vaccine is a cold temperatured vaccine, and it's something that can't sit on the shelf. So once they get the vaccine in, there's a very short timeline that the folks who are scheduled for a vaccination need to get there, get in line, and get that and take the vaccine or take the shot. So we are working with the city to streamline that process, and hopefully we will have everything in place this week. And that's the good news, because once we have our distributing the vaccination to a sizable portion of our staff, we will also be able to resume our timeline for phasing in-person instruction once our staff are receiving vaccinations. So that is the information I want to share regarding that. And if board members, if you have any questions regarding that, I'll be happy to my staff have been attending regular meetings as well. So if there's a question I'll be happy to answer that, or I'll turn it over to some of my staff who have been more involved with those meetings on a regular basis. I'll turn it over at this time to teaching and learning. Dr. Menglamont has some information regarding assessment scheduling, our test administration, and some other instructional information. Dr. Menglamont, are you with us?
Dr. Parker, I had a quick point of
I am.
Okay. We'll go ahead. Go ahead and proceed, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Parker. Good evening, Mr. Brown and members of the board. Tonight I'm going to provide you with a very quick, I promise, update regarding the testing requirements and the timeline for testing, along with a brief update on the supports that we're providing to teachers that are going to best prepare them for a return to in-person instruction. So first, let's start with a quick reminder on testing. As you can see from the calendar, testing begins with our students on January 11th, and it will run through February 19th. The testing of our English language learners has been extended by the VDOE. This WIDA testing was originally set to close on April 16th, if you remember, but based on the superintendent's memo from December 30th, the window has now been extended to provide greater flexibility to our school divisions. The window will now close on June 25th. SOL testing has begun for all our students and will run through February 19th. Parents have had the ability to delay testing based on just whether or not they wanted their child to come in person, and they can delay testing until May of 2020. So far, we've only had about 25% of our high school students delay testing until May, but about 50% of our students at the middle school have delayed testing until the spring. PSAT testing begins on January 26th for our juniors, and right now we have about 255 students who have opted in to take this test. And of course, we will begin our exam and benchmark testing, and that's going to start January 26th, and it'll run through January 27th. And our hopes is to use the data from these assessments, and it's going to help support the development of our student growth measures. This data can be given to the schools and will help inform current instructional practices and also identify students that are in need of continued remediation or intervention services. While we're beginning testing with our students, we're also busy preparing our teachers for the students to return in person. So the next slide. When students return, our teachers will be tasked with teaching both their virtual and at-home students while also teaching their face-to-face students. And I spoke to you guys briefly about this prior in the November board meeting and talked a little bit about what this might look like. Teachers who opt to teach both their virtual at-home students at the exact same time that they teach their face-to-face students, this is what we're coining the concurrent model for teaching. And then other teachers may opt to do a flip-flop between their groups, meaning that they'll teach their face-to-face students while their virtual and at-home students work asynchronously. And when the teacher is done teaching, their in-person students will then set them to some sort of independent task while they work with their virtual at-home students via like a video conferencing, Zoom. Some teachers may even choose to do concurrent one day, and the next day their lesson may be suited more for a flip-flop model. We want to really empower our teachers to choose the type of model that they are most comfortable with and give them the autonomy on the specifics of what that might look like within the model. So regardless of the model chosen, professional development regarding best practices for teaching and learning with these models has been the focus of both our curriculum development team and our instructional technology team. So on the next slide. On December 16th, all elementary teachers began learning about the hybrid teaching model. The morning of the 16th, our teachers could work at their own pace through an asynchronous model that was created by a partner of ours, Collaborative Classrooms. And this asynchronous session helped teachers understand what are those best practices for concurrent teaching model, which is what all elementary teachers are going to be employing just for their morning meeting when they employ their social emotional learning curriculum into the morning meeting. The afternoon session was a little bit different, and it focused on what the structure will be for literacy and math during hybrid instruction. And then teachers also received information on how they would be teaching science and social studies asynchronously when in-person instruction begins. On the next slide, we start to really focus on our secondary teachers and what their professional development is going to look like. This past Wednesday, our secondary teachers at all secondary teachers, middle school and high school, met with our ITCs and our curriculum and development leads, and they did a breakdown of what are the two instructional models for hybrid learning, that's being concurrent and flip-flop. And then they provided teachers with what I call tried and true best practices. And I say tried and true because our instructional teams did a trial run with each other to determine what were the challenges and what were the benefits of both models. This upcoming January 29th on our whole division Professional Development Day, our instructional leads will recreate, I should say, a simulation of the models with their content teachers. Then our content teachers will reflect and debrief after the simulation. So they're going to be able to see it in action. They're going to play the student role as the instructional leads play the teacher. And you're going to have some teachers that are virtual and some teachers that are in person. And so they'll be able to see it in action, and then they're going to be able to reflect and debrief after that simulation. So while more professional learning is forthcoming from the division, we also know that our building leads are providing professional learning to teachers to help them grow their instructional repertoire for hybrid learning, giving them kind of like a double shot of how to bring theory into practice. So this includes the teaching and learning presentation for the evening, and I'll allow you guys time for questions or any points of clarification.
Mr. Chairman?
All right. Questions? I believe Ms. Amon had a question first.
I had a question for Dr. Parker.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify my understanding, because we're talking about, we know the governor wants us to get in person. We're talking about making sure we want to get the vaccines. Am I correct that part of this is due to our numbers of staff that has tested positive and or would be having to quarantine? This might be a good way we can do that, letting everyone that wants to get their first vaccine, for just making sure we have robust staffing as we get back into the classroom.
And that is a very good question, and that is at the crux of my concern with where we are currently in terms of transition into in-person instruction. As we've seen with the number of staff increasingly report having positive cases, the concern that our staff have will be once we implement in-person instruction, where are the replacements going to be when a person has a positive test that they caught out in the community, and we need another bus driver, or we need a substitute teacher, or we need someone to supplement the instructional program or the operational needs of the school division while we have students reporting to school. While the governor's information was very purposeful and well received, the concern with the positivity rates that we're seeing with our staff that we have no control over is still alarming. And I think the vaccination planning will significantly help with that, which will allow us, because once we get them in school, we still have to maintain the operational supports and the instructional supports that we have in place. And when folks are going home to quarantine for 2 weeks, it's going to be hard to maintain the consistency of instruction once we get them there. And we're seeing those numbers now. So if we're data-driven, the numbers have shown that since we've come back from the holiday, we've almost tripled the amount of reported cases of our staff on a regular basis, and that is alarming. So I think the vaccination, as the vaccinations move forward and we're able to get a sizable portion of our staff vaccinated, we can ensure that once it's not just getting them there, but the consistency of maintaining school operations is what lies behind that. And that's where we have to make sure that we have a sizable portion of our staff vaccinated. We've also included some numbers. The numbers we're going to provide also include a portion of substitutes who may also receive the vaccination, because we know that we may have situations where we have staff who may either be teaching from home or may seriously be impacted by the virus and not be able to perform their duties. And someone will need to take up the instructional mission for those students that are impacted by that. So that's pretty much where we are with that, and why I still say the information that was provided is very helpful from the VDOE and the research that they've supported. Our numbers also tell a story as well that we also need to be very cautious about as we move forward.
Other questions? All right, I'll just ask one question similar to Ms. Amon's on point of clarification. As a parent sitting at home and just watching this and seeing how I'm going to try to plan things, if you go back to the schedule slide, because as we mentioned, there's going to be an opportunity for staff to get the vaccine. We're doing a survey. There's SOL testing as well as PSAT testing and other testing that's going on right now, which I understand that most of not all of that will be in person. The students are coming into school to take these tests. But as a parent, when all is said and done, when do we reasonably expect after this whole process is complete that kids would be back in school under any circumstances?
Mr. Chairman, it's my hope, and I want to make sure that I speak very cautiously because the vaccinations will need, the supply of vaccines will need to come in. And since that has been, if you have been following the news, that has been a frustration of our city manager and the localities, that the peninsula has been slow to receive the supply for distribution. But as soon as the vaccinations are here, we will be ready to roll, and we will be ready for staff to have access to those vaccinations. It is still my intent to see students transitioning to in-person instruction during the month of February. Reasonably the first week, if we can get elementary, special education, and ELL staff as a first tier, bus drivers. But that will depend on the supply of vaccines that are available to our staff over the coming weeks. And that's our intent. We will put them at the first tier. We will put our child nutrition staff. We have a meeting tomorrow morning to flesh out exactly who our first tier of personnel will be, and it will be mission essential to allow us to streamline that timeline to start getting kids into school and getting our teachers here safely. So I would say, if I was a parent listening tonight, that it definitely is dependent on vaccine availability, but you will see a reasonable timeline that accommodates that schedule in the coming days as we know more from the city on the readiness of our staff to receive vaccinations.
Thank you. All right, then I believe that, are we on to item 5.02, our strategic plan update, Dr. Parker?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have Dr. Shamika Gerald joining us this evening to provide the board with an update of our strategic plan, Journey 2025. As you recall, at the beginning, at the end of last year, the board approved our 5-year strategic plan, and we also understand that something got in the way, which was this pandemic, which would allow us to have a broader community impact introduction to this strategic plan. But Dr. Gerald is going to share what has been done up to this point, and she and her staff have been working diligently to move Journey 2025 forward, and also she'll give the board some information as far as what to expect coming in the coming months. So, Dr. Gerald, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Board Chair Brown, Vice Chair Searles Law, board members, Dr. Parker, and our Newport News community. I'm excited to join you this evening to provide a mid-year update on the Newport News Public Schools Strategic Plan. The purpose of this evening's presentation is to reintroduce our community to Journey 2025, provide updates on our progress, communicate our next steps, and gather your feedback on our work this far. My goal is to ensure transparency and open lines of communication in our work. Let's start with a quick overview of Journey 2025 and how it will transform our school division over the next 5 years. Our work began in 2018 where the idea of the Newport News Profile of a Learner was developed during our participation in the first Virginia is for Learners Innovation Network cohort. This work led to the organization of the Newport News Public Schools Strategic Planning Team, which, in partnership with our community, worked over 18 months to not only develop the Profile of a Learner, but a 5-year strategic plan that supports our profile. After receiving board approval in May 2020, our school division has worked to ensure a successful implementation. A strategic plan is a call to action that allows Newport News Public Schools to remain focused and relevant in an ever-changing world. Journey 2025 is intended to make Newport News Public Schools better, stronger, smarter, and more equitable than when we started. Bill George, with Peter Sims in the book True North, has this quote: "True North is your internal compass that represents who you are." Our vision and mission represent who we are. They represent what we believe is possible for each student. These statements serve as our compass, and Journey 2025 is our map. Embedded in Journey 2025 is the profile of a Newport News learner, which outlines the 7 attributes which are rooted in the 5 C's of the Virginia Department of Education's Profile of a Learner. Our Profile of a Learner is not a separate document or initiative. Rather, it is an intended outcome of our strategic plan. As we meet each of the 5 goals identified, we ensure that each student, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, language spoken at home, ability, and zip code, is prepared to engage in a global society by being college, career, and citizen ready. As Journey 2025 was developed, we have big plans for year 1 rollout, but no one could have predicted school closures. Though a majority of our reports have been related to supporting our school community and virtual learning and decisions around our timeline for a safe return, this year is not a lost year for our school community. Our students, families, staff, and community are collaborating in new ways. Believe it or not, you are supporting the work of Journey 2025 every day. As we approach a year of remote learning and the midpoint of Journey 2025's first year, we are reminded that we must not only remain focused on the present, but look towards the future. Dr. Parker shared a quote with us last week that put our current reality into perspective for me. It's like a finger pointing away at the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you'll miss the moon. This quote is by Bruce Lee. In this image, Return to Learn is the finger directing our vision towards our moon, Journey 2025. Though the work is challenging and makes us uncomfortable, we are using these experiences to guide us along the journey. The work we have done so far and what we will continue to do will completely transform our school division and in turn transform our Newport News community. My charge to Newport News this evening is when you find yourself intensely focusing on the finger, remember that if you look beyond your fingertip to where you are being directed, you will see what we will become through our work in Journey 2025. As we begin to look towards that moon, I would like to share what has already taken place as a part of our Return to Learning plan. Our strategic plan has Our strategic plan has been outfitted with icons to align our work and communications. In addition, we have updated all of our literature to reflect our focus. Can you click it again? Several departments have made commitments to Journey 2025 through intentional connections to their work and professional learning. These teams have completed the Heart, Hand, Mind protocol that the board participated during the August board retreat. A key element to measuring any plan is determining our baseline data or our starting point. This allows us to have a relevant frame of reference for our progress over time. We have developed the Journey 2025 data requirements list and are working to develop our student growth measures, which will serve as our benchmark for plan monitoring. In previous presentations, I have shared that Journey 2025 would be led by a groups co-chaired by division and school-based leaders. These teams have formed and were tasked with identifying metrics that honor our current reality while connecting the data to how we will move our strategic plan forward. Thus far, teams have met and recommended year 1 key performance indicators. Lastly, we are tackling challenging conversations head-on by starting with our division leadership to ensure that we are equipped with the tools necessary to support our entire school community. I will take a few moments to share specifics around leadership collectives, organization, and work in our division's leadership equity work. As I shared with the board in July, we have created the Journey 25 Leadership Collective. In collective leadership, there's a shared responsibility in decision making. It requires specific conditions for the success of the whole team. Those are trust, shared power, transparent and effective communication, accountability, and shared learning. It is based on the recognition that without the gifts and talents, perspectives, and efforts of many, sustainable change is difficult to achieve. The success of Journey 2025 depends on the leadership in the collective rather than the skills of just one person. When developing our work group, we pause to identify how our strategic plan will impact our division and our city. Our students are our heart work. As we take a step back, though, to look at the layers of support for our students, the organization of our teams becomes clear. Students are directly supported by our educators. When we say educators, we mean every adult team member of Newport News Public Schools. We are all responsible for the education of our students. Educators are supported by our amazing leaders, and we are all supported by our community, which includes our families and business partners. Working groups have been intentionally formed in this way to ensure the vision remains on the entire plan versus silos created around specific goals. Each work group has 2 committee chairs that are responsible for securing additional committee members, work plan development, monitoring and reporting, and communication. As teams work together to identify, can you click it, Ms. Price? I'm sorry. Identify key strategic issues facing Newport News and resources needed to address barriers to goal attainment through data analysis. They develop communication plans and strategic plan activities that support the involvement of all stakeholders. They collaborate cross-departmentally to ensure each of the 5 strategic goals is visibly integrated into our daily work and implemented with fidelity. Lastly, they actively advocate for implementation of Journey 2025 with all stakeholders through modeling the implementation strategy. Each group has also been assigned an equity champion and a digital champion. Our champions ask some of the tough questions to help us grow and keep our teams on track. Here are the members of the leadership team for each of the work groups or committees. Work groups focus on Journey's impact in each of the areas defined. Team Student ensures each student receives what they need when they need it and will develop the measures for our Newport News Public Schools Profile of a Learner in partnership with Curriculum and Development. The primary focus for year 1 is ensuring that we are meeting the social and emotional needs of our learners while continuing to provide high-quality instruction through a blended learning environment. Team Educator focuses on the growth and development of our educators. The primary focus of year 1 is on the social and emotional well-being of our staff while providing professional learning that supports our work as virtual instructors. Team Leader ensures our leaders have the support and resources to effectively lead our schools and engage our community. The primary focus for this year is on the social and emotional well-being of our leaders and ensuring we engage in culturally responsive school leadership practices. Our team that's focused on community is working to increase intentional engagement with our community. Our community is critical to every aspect of our work, and we cannot do this without you. I would like to take a moment to thank the members of our Leadership Collective for their commitment to this work as we simultaneously navigate virtual instruction. Though we all want to make this happen tomorrow for our community, we are reminded, like a friend shared with me, that we are on a journey. This is not a jolt. And we need to keep our eyes directed on our path moving forward. Related to our equity work, we often, in education, we often roll out new programs or initiatives by starting at the classroom level. Our leaders learn alongside in a collaborative learning model. While this is an appropriate measure for items such as learning targets or other easily observable outcomes, the work of equity isn't as easily observed, and we must have consistent language around our work to support it. This is why we are approaching our work differently. Our equity work has begun with our senior staff. Under the leadership of Dr. Parker, our senior staff works together to distribute resources, provide support, and remove barriers for our schools. In October, we just started with a presentation by Leah Walker, Director of Equity for Virginia Department of Education. Ms. Walker walked our team through Virginia's Navigating Ed Equity framework, the Virginia 5 Cs, and provided us an overview of the Newport News data as compared to the state. Following this presentation, our team embarked on the journey of completing the Intercultural Development Inventory, which assessed our team's cultural competence and recommended next steps to support our growth. This work will lay the foundation, increase our equity muscles, better preparing us to support our schools. It also provides a reflective entry point as we begin the process of equity policy development. Don't worry, our focus is not only on division leadership. Of team of equity leaders worked to craft our Newport News Public Schools Return to Learn equity message, which can be found in the school-based Return to Learn planning document. This message was designed to center our work at each building on meeting the needs of our students. In addition, all principals and assistant principals have participated have been invited to participate in the. In addition, all principals and assistant principals have participated in the Culturally Responsive Leadership book study and have been invited to participate in the Region 2 Equity Chat, centering on implementing Virginia's equity framework. After each regional session, participants are invited to an NMPS chat where we discuss barriers to equitable outcomes for students in our school division. I am also excited to share with you that in March, Dr. Parker and I will partner to present the Ed Equity VA 5C pillar of continuous reflection based on our work with senior leadership in the Intercultural Development Inventory. Though we have been able to begin our implementation of Journey 2025, there is more to come over the next few months. Our success is not measured by test scores and accreditation ratings alone, and we cannot create our vision for success in NMPS without you, our school community. Be on the lookout for opportunities to serve on committees, provide input, and hold us to our commitment to ensure each student graduates college, career, and citizen ready. In the coming months, we will begin a more formal plan rollout and continue to gather your feedback on our work. Though it may look like only a few activities are happening each month, rest assured that the work behind the scenes to develop an equity policy and a Newport News equity framework, monitor our outcomes, and realign resources are continuing. In February, we will also hold our first Superintendent's Equity Council meeting. This group will include members of our internal school teams and external community members. We will also have a student equity council focused on how our young leaders can support our work and change the narrative. In addition, our community team will work with our community partners to reimagine what partnership means in our school division. At this time, I would also like to announce, the slide didn't make it in here, on February 10th, Newport News Public Schools will welcome Hamish Brewer to deliver a message that will motivate and inspire us on our journey. Dr. Brewer is a highly sought-after, engaging, and all-out phenomenal speaker that will engage our division in reflection on where we have been and what we will become as a result of our work. We hope that you'll be able to join us, and registration information is coming soon. I hope that I've provided you a clear overview of our work this far and our next steps. I'm happy to answer questions and receive feedback at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Gerald. Questions from the board? All right, well, thank you for, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Parker.
So just one thing, I'm very excited about the work Dr. Gerald is doing with her team. And I know we've had, obviously with the pandemic, some missed opportunities, and Dr. Gerald has been instrumental in putting together all of our focus groups with community members during the pandemic to solicit input on our R2L plan. And so she's been working, she has a different hat sometimes with our community engagement, staff engagement. But Dr. Gerald, I just want to let the board know also that we'll come back at the latter part of this year, and we'll share those metrics that those baseline metrics that we're establishing for measuring the progress of the strategic plan. And we're looking forward to sharing that with the community as far as any work that will come out of those metrics as well as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes, we do have a question. Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
And so a question that I have that kind of is always that overarching one that we have right now is, how is COVID going to be affecting our strategic plan? I will assume that when we get the chance to have that update, then we will even get maybe a breakout portion of how COVID has adjusted our needs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think we're living in that pandemic time right now. There's certain things that we haven't implemented because of the circumstances that we're in. And while I would say delayed, not negated, we will obviously move forward with the work of the strategic plan. Right now, we're organizing. If you saw tonight, we're getting organized into our committees. We're establishing the metrics to measure progress. That work will lead to targeted areas of improvement in our division. so that we move beyond what's happening today. But how do we envision the transformational change of Newport News is where our staff are having conversations right now, which I think is very empowering. And Dr. Gerald has already tasked us with taking a cultural inventory as a division team. We encourage the board, if you'd like to take that inventory, it will make it available to you. So we're already starting to have equity discussions and how can we work better as a more diverse community.
Yes, we do have Mr. Ely.
It's not pertaining to Dr. Job. I do have a question. I know you mentioned earlier about kids back in the building maybe in February. Are you still be going by the matrix and the data of the health department, or are you set on that date?
We are. That will always be a part of our decision making, is how the what the community aspects look in terms of the data. The governor's office has also given us guidance to look at other metrics as well, including the mitigation strategies that we talked about this evening, because we've already seen that there is a significantly lower level of risk in school if it's the same as, I guess, a hospital or anywhere else. If people taking this seriously, the social distancing, hand washing, wearing of masks, there is a very low level of transmission in schools. So with that being said, that's why some divisions in public and private schools have been able to forge ahead. But obviously vaccinations will give that added level of support that will allow our staff who have some serious concerns with the level of community spread that we've seen, the confidence to maybe come back in and start doing some of the in-person instruction that we need. So I think we're going to see this spike continue well into probably the latter part of this month or even into February, and then we may see some decline. But right now, what we're looking at right now is how do we continue to prepare our staff through the vaccinations to be better equipped to move to in-person instruction. So we are looking at those metrics. We know that they're significant. We also have other metrics that we're encouraged to use to make our future decisions in terms of our impact in terms of implementing the safety standards, the safety practices in place. We also need to look at, once we get students in school, whether we see any evidence of community spread. Because if we get in school and we start to see that we have significant incidents of community spread, then we know we have to pull back. But without kids in school, we are only talking about it right now. We don't know what it will be like, other than the data showing that we've seen a lower risk or a lower level of incident in schools. So with that being said, with that information that's been collected, we know that we can do it, and we can do it well if we put those systems in place. And we've already invested quite a bit in making sure that we have the resources necessary to implement those 5 mitigation strategies.
But you still are listening to data, like if the numbers, if they say we're sky high, and you still say February 4th, just throwing the data out there, you won't go with that data. You'll wait to data.
I think what we're encouraging our community to look at are the entire range of the information that the VDOE and the CDC is recommending.
Okay.
Right now we know we have our health metrics in terms of community transmission and positivity rate are at the higher end. We also know that the science is showing that if you implement the 5 mitigation strategies in fidelity consistently, that there is a lower risk in school buildings. So the governor's office is saying, we know that we see a high rate of transmission in the community, but we also have a low risk in the buildings once we implement these safety standards. So, including the vaccinations, okay, where do we need to go in terms of moving towards in-person instruction? And when we get there, they're saying, look at if you're having incidents of community spread. So that's another metric that we would add to our assessment to see if we're having any rates of community spread in our schools that will warrant us to have any concern with moving forward, with continuing to expand in-person instruction beyond a small number of students.
Thank you, Dr. Mark.
So we have to start somewhere, and the governor is clearly giving us the guidance to say, push forward but do it safely, and make sure that you're monitoring your data when you do move to in-person instruction to make sure that you're seeing low incidences of community spread. Now, if you start seeing that metric move in the wrong direction, you need to back out.
Because our neighbor, which is Virginia Beach's school name?
Chesapeake started today. There's some divisions that are bringing their students back. Gloucester, some other divisions that are moving towards it, and they're using that standard. They're using community spread in their schools as a standard to determine the safety of their staff and students.
So right now, Chesapeake is the only one that you know?
No, I think Gloucester will be a school division that's moving forward with in-person instruction, and there are others. I can provide you with a list of others that are moving forward as well.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Searslaw.
Also, I guess return to learn. I really don't want us to get tripped up on a date of return again, as this board has been, as that happened to us once before. So when I was doing the math, and I know it feels like we're at the beginning of January, but we're really not. We're at the midpoint. So if we're basing going back to school on our teachers having been vaccinated, does that mean they will be fully vaccinated? Will they have had the second dose prior to us commencing return to learn?
Well, I think we'll definitely rely on our health professionals as far as the vaccinations and when we can proceed. And that's why I'm very hesitant tonight to communicate a date. I want everybody to hear that because right now I don't have a clear understanding on when all of the vaccines will be available in adequate supply for our staff. But to me, that's a key element based on our health metrics that we need to make sure we have available to our personnel for added support. We feel very confident that our safety measures that we have put in place in our schools and will be in place when our students return to in-person instruction will be done fairly well. And we want to but they have to be done consistently to ensure that everyone is safe once we move to in-person instruction. But I will say to the board that I look forward to communicating at least a timeline once I know what is the availability of the vaccine, when we will have the majority of our staff vaccinated, whether the health department recommends full vaccination or the first shot, whether to proceed forward. We will work out those details and get those to the board as soon as possible.
So as soon as you can get the vaccines, the sooner we can start vaccinating our staff.
That's it. We're in the 1B category, so we're providing them a list this week, contact information. Once we survey our staff, we're prioritizing who needs to take the vaccine first and what tiers. And as soon as the vaccines arrive, they will start scheduling our staff for appointments to receive the vaccine. CNU right here next to us is the vaccination clinic location.
Who's responsible for providing it for us?
The health department and the city. They're working together. It's with the locality. Riverside Health Systems also has vaccinations available. So the whole group is meeting consistently right now to do the remainder of the planning. Did I leave anyone out, Ms. Price? I think those are the big three.
So we can't basically do any vaccinations until the city, the health department provide us with the vaccinations to vaccinate our staff.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yes,
I don't want teachers or school people thinking that we have these vaccinations.
We do not. We will not have access.
And we can, just do it now. I want to be clear that we can't do any vaccinations until we receive the product.
Yeah, so the vaccinations are very controlled, and they'll come into the locality, and the designated vaccination clinic right now is Christopher Newport University, which will be set up by the end of the week. They will start some preliminary trials runs with some of the personnel in particular who will be administering the vaccines, because they're using some of our staff as well will be participating in administering the vaccine, and then once they get their supply, they will be distributing from that location. So we have no control over when the vaccine comes in. The only thing we have control of right now is to survey our staff, provide them with a prioritized list, and then wait for the call. Once the supply is in, and we will start. They will start scheduling our staff for shots.
And it's Pfizer? Do you know?
It's the Pfizer vaccine. To my knowledge, I haven't heard anything about Moderna. Pfizer at this time, because I know there seemed to be a sense of urgency when it comes in to make sure that they have individuals scheduled as soon as possible to make sure they're ready to take the vaccine.
Thank you.
So thank you for that report, and I believe that moves us now on to item 5.03. We have a presentation on our facility renaming. Board members recall that we had tasked the superintendent to form a task force in regards to facility renaming, and now that task force has a report for us this evening.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have, as you recall, we tasked Mr. Richard Wright, Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Whalen. That group formed a committee. They have been working diligently behind the scenes to continue to move forward with our planning for naming facilities, and they are here to present tonight with where we are with the timeline that we presented the board. As you recall, that timeline calls for us to come to the board in April with recommended names for the schools that were identified, as well as any further recommendations on the tier 2 or 3 schools. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Mr. Wright and Mrs. Brooks for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Good evening, Chairman Brown, Vice Chair Searles Law, members of the board, and Dr. Parker. Last summer, the school board asked the staff to research the names of our schools in response to the governor's letter requesting that school divisions change the names of schools to reflect the inclusive, diverse, and welcoming community every child deserves. This evening, we would like to provide a brief overview of the research we conducted and our work with the Diversity and Inclusion Task Force that was formed to review our school naming policy and make recommendations to the board. So we started with one question. Which school names potentially do not reflect the current NMPS values of inclusion and diversity? As you may recall, we began this process by researching the names of all of our schools. According to the local newspaper archives, prior to 1958 and the consolidation of Newport News City and Warwick County, Newport News named its schools after historical people, while Warwick County named public schools for various parts of the county. After consolidation of the two localities, newly constructed schools were named to honor former superintendents and principals. We identified and tiered school names for consideration and prepared a report to the school board. Then the school board voted to rename schools in Tier 1, which I will share with you. As stated, on September 15th, the school board voted to proceed with renaming the schools in Tier 1, Epps, Nelson, and Lee Hall Elementary Schools, and Dozier Middle School. Our team developed this timeline to guide our work, and I would like to take a moment to review our progress thus far. In October, we formed a Diversity and Inclusion Task Force led by school division staff and comprised of members of the community with a long-standing commitment to education, along with representatives from the schools in Tier 1. The Diversity and Inclusion Task Force is comprised of 16 community and school division leaders from across the city, including 8 civic leaders and 8 members of our leadership team. And again, this includes principals from the schools in Tier 1. We would like to thank the members of the task force for leading this important work. And now, Mrs. Brooks will speak to the task force progress and the recommendations. Mrs. Brooks?
Thank you, Mr. Wright. And good evening. At its first meeting in November, the task force reviewed our school division's policy on the naming of facilities and agreed that naming criteria should be added to our policy. The group then discussed potential criteria for guiding how new school names should be selected. The task force also reviewed the policies of other school divisions and made recommendations regarding the naming criteria for NMPS schools, as well as for parts of school buildings. In December, the task force finalized its recommendations on school naming criteria, and the planning team revised our current school board policy to incorporate their recommendations. At this time, I'd like to review our current policy and then share the school naming criteria that the task force is recommending. This is our current policy on the naming of schools and facilities. While our policy requires that all school names be approved by the school board, it does not include criteria for selecting the names of our schools and facilities. So how did our group reach consensus in forming its recommendations? As we mentioned earlier, the task force reviewed the school naming policies from several school divisions across the state and discussed the naming criteria that many of them included in their policies. So based on the group's discussion, the planning team developed 4 options that covered the range of criteria across the school divisions from Hampton to Hanover County to Alexandria and others. So for example, some policies were very specific by stating that elementary schools be named after individuals, but secondary schools be named after geographic or historical locations, as was the case in Hampton. Other policies did not differentiate between levels, but addressed schools as a whole. So we took the group through an exercise where we narrowed down the criteria to a combination of options 2 and 3, and then spent additional time discussing whether we should continue to allow schools to be named or renamed in honor of an individual, and if so, should we specify whether or not the individual be living or deceased. The group discussed that point at length and determined that there were benefits for students to interact with the individual or living legend after whom their school is named, such is the case for Mrs. Flora Crittenden participating in teachable moments with the students at Crittenden Middle School. So after rich discussion and collaboration, the task force is recommending for the school board's consideration the following criteria to be added to the school division's current policy on the naming or renaming of schools. Schools may be named for 1, the geographic location of the school, such as the case with Woodside High School on Woodside Lane. 2, the physical or environmental features of the community. 3, historical locations or considerations such as Heritage High School, named to acknowledge the history of several NNPS schools that were closed. 4, specific programs included in the facility, as in the case of the Discovery STEM Academy. Or 5, in honor of a person, living or deceased, who has made a significant contribution to education or has rendered outstanding service to mankind in their community, state, or country. I would like to add that the school was adamant that we state in all cases the values of diversity and inclusion will be considered during the naming and renaming process. So here is a copy of the proposed revised policy that is before you this evening. You will notice that the draft policy also states that the same criteria for naming and renaming schools will apply to naming or renaming portions of schools and school facilities. Also in this draft, the school board will continue to make the final decision in the naming or renaming of schools and facilities. So in keeping with our timeline, as a next step, we are requesting that the school board approve the revised policy during its February meeting. Once approved, the task force will develop procedures for consistency and guiding the renaming process for each school. After researching the names of the Tier 2 and Tier 3 schools, a historian will brief the task force on the namesakes of the schools in those tiers and will present recommendations to the school board. Now, given our current circumstances, we will have to use creative ways to involve the community, such as through virtual public input sessions. So if we stay safe and all goes well, we plan to solicit and review nomination forms in March, conduct public input sessions to narrow down name choices for each of the 4 schools, and then submit the name recommendations for each school to the superintendent. Our goal is for the superintendent to present his final recommendations for school names to the school board in April for consideration and potential action. So this concludes our report this evening. The members of the planning team and I will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks. Questions from the board? Yes, Dr. Best.
First, I have a comment regarding Mr. Wright. You made a comment that per the governor's instructions, actually before the governor directed the schools to look at renaming schools, it was already being talked about. So I'd just like the record to reflect that for the first thing. And then the second thing, I learned something new today, although I vaguely remember the naming process for Heritage High School. I kind of remember some things, but I never knew that the name of Heritage was to acknowledge the schools that had closed in the community. I learned that today, but I just wanted to know, how does Heritage reflect that? 'Cause, like, how, and did somebody tell me that? And what do they do to acknowledge, how do they reflect that? I never knew that, because I've never seen anything like that.
Well, I know we have several staff members who were around when the school name was being determined. Anyone, if you remember the discussions around naming that school, Lynn, if you were familiar with the name, I think Heritage in itself speaks to a tradition. So I would assume that had something to do with the naming of it. And it's general enough to not specifically give homage to one specific school name that closed. But obviously I was not part of the historical discussions around the naming of Heritage High School. But if I have staff who were here during that process, please feel free to chime in.
I just wondered, because I never knew that. So I learned something today, but I still didn't. If I didn't hear it today, I would have never known. So I just.
Dr. Parker, this is Mr. Wright. I think we're lucky to have Dr. Gerald, who just left Heritage High School, here on the line. Dr. Gerald, could you speak to that?
Yes. One of the things, Dr. Best, that happened during my first few weeks at Heritage High School is that I received a in-depth history lesson on the naming of the school and worked really diligently to remind students consistently that the legacy in which they stood on was built off of the foundation of Newport News High School and the transition through the various schools that have been closed. So it is a constant reminder through the school. The plaque is outside of the cafeteria there, but as a building leader, we took responsibility of ingraining this school is not just Heritage High School, 5,800 family, and it's a cute name. Really, it is about the people that served before you. And I think 2 years ago in the graduation speech, I spoke directly to the founding members of specific members of each school that had been celebrated in the community. Ms. Tina Vick, the Vice Mayor, Mayor Price, like we talked about what that school means to the community and how that school has impacted and reshaped the Southeastern community as well. So it might not be an outward thing that you have seen on a consistent basis, but that is every assembly that we talk to large groups of children, anytime that we had an opportunity to invite our former graduates, and not just graduates of Heritage, but from the other schools as well, to come back and speak about their experiences and what that school meant to them. That was building on the legacy and the heritage, the rich heritage in that community. So I hope that answered your question, because it is not wasted that it was just called Heritage High School, but it is 100% clear to the building leaders when they transition into that position that the naming of the school is to pay homage to the other high schools that had closed.
Thank you, Dr. Gerald. All right. So in closing, I'll just make sure, point of clarification, because we talked about portions of buildings and the entire building. So we could still elect to name a school after Mr. Gore.
Absolutely.
All right.
That would be an honor.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, so then thank you for that presentation, and we look forward to April and the committee's work. Now we'll move on to item 5.04, the attendance report, 5.05, the membership report, 5.06, the construction report. Board members, you've received copies of these reports. At this time, are there any questions? Thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5.07, which is comments by the superintendent. Dr. Parker, please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take a moment to wish our staff, those individuals we spoke of earlier who recently tested positive for COVID. We'd like to, one, wish them best wishes and a speedy recovery. We know that this is a serious virus. We know that sometimes we focus on numbers, but it's always important to put names and faces behind those numbers as well, and we're thinking about you this evening. It is always uncomfortable news when we receive such a report. However, I'm grateful to our staff members who do directly report when they receive a positive test in a timely manner to their immediate supervisor and coordinating with our COVID response team and the Peninsula Health District, because your actions directly keep our employees safe. So thank you so much for that. We wish you a speedy recovery. Congratulations to our student school board representative, Mr. Jordan Moody, who represented Newport News Public Schools as a guest panelist speaker for the Dream With Us community discussion on health equity, which was a collaborative discussion with Centera Health System and Hampton University. Jordan has had several opportunities to represent Newport News Public Schools as a student representative, and he has done a phenomenal job. You would be impressed and pleased with your selection. Congratulations to the Newport News Public Schools Peninsula Regional Education Program for being named a finalist in the Rethink Adult Education Challenge, a U.S. Department of Education financial competition for pre-apprenticeship programs. And these are our adult students. Our adult education program now advances to the second stage of this competition, which gives them access to resources to help them further develop the Youth Build Pre-Apprenticeship Program, an integrated education and training program focused on construction trades. The winning proposal, get this, will receive $250,000 grand prize. We're looking forward to earning that grand prize, and we're looking forward to recognizing these students and the staff who coordinate that program in the future. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Mr. Chairman, I'll keep my comments short this evening, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Wonderful. So now we are to item 6, which is another opportunity to hear from the public. If we have any cards. Madam Clerk, do we have any cards at this time? Do we have any cards? Seeing no cards, then we will now move on to matters by the school board. And as mentioned, Mr. Moody is not here this evening, so then we will start with Dr. Best.
Okay. Good evening. I just have a couple of brief comments. First, I would like to say Happy New Year to those of you that I haven't had an opportunity to say Happy New Year to. Also, throughout my interactions with many, many teachers since this COVID-19 pandemic, I've had dozens and dozens of teachers to tell me that because of this pandemic, this is the first time they've ever started watching a school board meeting. And so I think that's very, very good. I love that. I told them to continue to do that even after we get out of this situation, because it's very, very important that we know what they're thinking, that we hear their voices, and that they know what's going on. So I encourage them to continue watching the school board meeting. And the third thing, for any students or parents or anyone that's watching tonight, like I said, when the report was made about the renaming of the schools, I learned something tonight. And that's one of the good things about education, is the more that you know, the more you realize you don't know. But because we're lifelong learners, I'm very excited now to research the history of the name of Heritage High School, because now some of the conversations are coming back to me, but I'm excited about finding out a little more. So I'm happy to be a lifelong learner, and boys and girls, I hope that's one of the things that you take with you as you go through your education in Newport News Public School. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Ely.
Thank you. I just want to take this time to thank all the teachers and the staff for all the hard work that y'all are doing during this pandemic. I know it's very hard teaching virtual. I have a couple of educators in my family across the state, and they say it's very challenging trying to teach hard. And I just want to thank the parents for all the hard work that they're doing, sitting there making sure little Johnny is paying attention to the screen. So I definitely appreciate all the hard work for the parents. I definitely understand your frustration. I definitely know that the best way to educate our children is in person, is in school. So, hopefully with the vaccinations and all the mitigations that we're doing, we can eventually get back to school so our kids can get the education that they truly deserve. I also would like to thank Pastor Swan with Ivy Baptist with their continuous outpour and making sure that our community have what they need, and with their partnership with the school system has definitely been a blessing for all they have done for us. And all the presentations that were presented to us today, I do realize a lot of time and effort has gone into these presentations, making sure the community is informed as well as the board. And thank you, Dr. Parker, for what all you doing, your staff, making sure that we are abreast of what's going on during these unprecedented times. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ely. All right, Ms. Saman.
Sure. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman Brown. A couple of things. One, just thank you everyone for good presentations this evening, and I just want, it's good to hear the governor's encouragement to get back to in-person education. And I know we've got vaccines coming up and we've got a lot of data coming at us. So I just want to encourage us to continue to take maybe a nimble and holistic approach to all of this. We've got the vaccines. We're getting some more information on if we implement the measures there. Schools can be a good place to be with less transmission. And we're getting some good examples and testimonials from other districts. So I think that's all coming together to hopefully get us in sooner rather than later. And I would encourage us to take all of those things into consideration. And I think we're going to do that. And then just another matter, just wanted to, I'm sure most people know, but make mention that Minchville lost a family member over the holidays. And we were close to the family, a young man who was on the cross-country team. And while that's been a challenge, it's also been really heartwarming and encouraging to see the response of the men's cross-country team come around the family. And they did a Leaves for Luke fundraiser. And it's just, we've got not only the cross-country team, many wonderful young men and women in our schools, but just a great experience to see those kids and the character and concern of them. We've got a lot of really good kids up and coming in Newport News schools.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Amon. All right, Mr. Moody, I see that you have joined us, and we know that you represented us well last night on a panel. If you want to tell us about that, we'd love to hear it.
Well, yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here with you all. First, before I talk about that, I see that myself and you, Chairman Brown, are matching, so we're going to have to take some type of virtual selfie or something because we're matching today. But it was an honor, an absolute honor, to share with Centera and Hampton University yesterday, presenting my dream for America. I would like to thank Mrs. Raven Johnson, who was over the event again for the opportunity. It was great to see Isaiah there. I wish that I could have fist bumped him, elbow bumped him, but I'm upset that I could not do that. Just a couple things, Chairman Brown, if I can. This month of January is National Mentoring Month, and I am thankful for my host of mentors who have become family. I would like to especially highlight our Youth Development Department, Ms. Bridget Adams, Ms. Christina Buckingham, and Mr. Michael Nichols for their continued support and mentorship to me. Teachers, administrators, and NMPS staff, remember that every day, everyone needs a good mentor, because everybody needs somebody, okay? I wanted to shout out Heritage High School really, really quickly. A stage member and Heritage's SCA president, Sterling Bailey, brought to my attention that Heritage High School had a student-led town hall meeting for the entirety of the students at Heritage High School. I just wanted to shout out Heritage for using student voice in that way. Student families, this is an important message. I know that we're supposed to be taking exams. Then we'll start on Friday. We're supposed to be taking exams. I know how many of you are feeling, and I want to let you know that I am in the exact same boat with you, but we will get through this together. I wish you much success on your exams. Just keep hope and faith alive. You've got this. We've got this. As always, I would like to close with inviting you to stay connected with me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter with the digital name @StudentRepNMPS. In closing, I shared with my Sage family last week the famous words of Dr. Martin Luther King. He said, "You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step." I want you all to know, no matter how bad it looks, how confusing it is right now, to just take the first step. I love you all. I love my student family. And remember, I am always here for you. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Eloquent as always. All right. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's hard to go follow that, but again, great things are happening in Newport News Public Schools. I'm going to keep mine very short. Again, tomorrow is inauguration day, and I hope that all of our students out there, if you had an opportunity, please tune in to the inauguration. It's the peaceful changing of hands here and power in our country. And it starts here in our education. You know, it's always said that if we can't learn together, we can't live together. And so it starts here in education. And so we have to be educated on what's right and what's wrong, and believe in our systems that we have here. And if we can't believe in that, and then it's hard for us to even get along. So again, we can fight this virus. We can keep our mask on. Hopefully we can bring the kids back as soon as possible. We'll get the vaccines into the arms, and hopefully next year this time, you know, we'll be back to normal. And that being said, again, watch the inaugurations if you can. It's a lesson. This is what America's about tomorrow. Please tune in and be a part of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. Mr. Harris.
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no comments at this time. All right. Then that leaves us with you, Madam Vice Chair.
Great, thank you. I always try to look for some of the bright spots that we have in our district when we're going through these challenges, so my comments are directed at those. Just as Ms. Amon said, that we have some remarkable students here in our district with compassion and care and concern. We have some very academic and civically minded students as well. I've had the opportunity to join in with such things such as the STAND Community Champions, able to see our students perform and interact with the community in thanks and gratitude for what they've been receiving. I want to thank our families for making the sacrifice to support their students through our challenges with COVID. It's a big ask, and it's a big thing on families' plates, and we understand that very much so. Teachers, I want to thank you for your continued innovation, commitment, and commitment of extended hours and consistency with instruction for our students. I hear every single day that they appreciate that we are making the effort to keep everybody safe, but that they're very eager to get back to in-person instruction. And we know that our students are, and I definitely know our families are. So be patient. Trust that we are doing our best to do this for our community. I think I find myself saying, I want to lose no one on our watch. And so that also means that they need to be educated and in person. So we're working very diligently to do so.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Well, tonight we skipped our school board spotlight, but I do still want to call people's attention to the great work that is done by NNPS TV, that you can still catch that broadcast on Channel 47 every day at 6 a.m., 8 a.m., noon, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock. And if you don't want to tune in on TV, there's a YouTube channel for NNPS TV to catch our school board spotlight. This week was highlighted Nelson's Most Valuable Students, Stocks for Snowballs at Hines, and Connected at Home, highlighting a lot of really still innovative and great things are happening all throughout the school year, even during this time of pandemic. So please continue to check out the NNPS TV program, which provides great things that are happening in our schools. I also want to congratulate and thank Delegate Shelley Simons, putting on my regional chairman hat, that we are going to be privileged to have a former school board member who's now in the House of Delegates. Shelley Simons is going to be our featured speaker at the Tidewater Regional Networking event, which is hosted by the VSBA in March, and she's going to be one of our keynote. She's going to provide our keynote address and be giving board members tips on how they can better communicate with the General Assembly. So, for all board members in the Tidewater region, please look forward to that. And this will be Newport News, our going out party, because this is my last year as the chair there, and we'll go out with a bang there. It's going to be a great panel. We actually have several members from the House of Delegates who are part of the Education Committee who are going to be on our panel during that during that night. So please look forward to that and mark your calendars for that. As well, next week we have the Capitol Conference, which is another event in our Board of Distinction campaign that we're launching out. I know that several of you are going to be there representing. I'll be there as well, and looking forward to hearing about the legislation that is supporting us and getting passed, and help us participating in crafting that. So last thing I want to mention tonight is we talked about our strategic plan, our shared vision, and I want to just highlight that public, we have definitely been listening to you all. You all have talked a lot about us collaborating a lot more and working together closely with our partners in City Hall, our City Council members, and we've taken that to heart. We've been very strategic and deliberate about meeting, and there's been a lot of fruitful discussion from that. So the next thing that we're going to be doing in the next few weeks is partnering on a shared vision for education, and I want to just read that providing an exceptional education to our city's youngest citizens is a top priority of the school board and is vital to the growth and prosperity of our city. Paramount to accomplishing this pursuit is ensuring a vision for public education, a shared strategic vision developed, supported, and set in motion by the school board and the city council. With a unified vision, we can build an education-first culture in Newport News, where talented, dedicated educators have access to the resources and support they need to ensure that our students learn and thrive in a culture of high expectations, mutual respect, and understanding. So we are inviting members of City Council to a series of joint work sessions that will be held this month that will set the shared vision in motion. By working collaboratively, we can develop joint priorities for excellence in our schools, excellence that will ensure all students graduate college, career, and citizen ready. The idea for these collaborative work sessions have come in response to the rich discussions that have occurred over the past several months during our liaison meetings. As we said, that we've been very deliberate about having rich discussions with our council counterparts. And these discussions have laid the groundwork, and now we will come together to plan and build. And finally, that vision will be unveiled in February when we meet at our joint session. We'll unveil that vision, joint vision, to bring bring our education forward into 2025 and the journey 2025. So we look forward to that, and we'll be providing invitation to our counterparts in City Council following tonight's meeting. So with that, I thank everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. And enjoy your 2021, and let's have a great end of year.
Right.